So you're all being recorded now. So let's go ahead and just start. I will go ahead and call to order the June 16th, 2020 Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. I will then call roll. Henry McEnroth.
Here.
Tim West.
Here I am.
Ben Simmons.
Here.
Vance Tong.
Present.
Ray Atkinson.
Here.
John Anderson.
Here.
Bob LaSalle.
Here.
And then Chet Amir will be coming late. Okay, moving forward, approval of the minutes from the last meeting we had, which was all the way back in February. Does anybody have any? Yes?
I don't want me to interrupt, but did you see the message that says Josh couldn't hear us?
Josh can't hear us.
I've been chatting with Josh. Everybody else seems to hear. So Josh, it might be on your end.
Maybe a call-in number. It's offering that.
Josh, allow the audio to take over.
Okay, well, so let's move forward with the approval of minutes while Josh works on his audio. If he needs to call in, I can give him that number. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes from February? Other than what John Anderson already emailed me about?
I can't think of any.
Okay, does somebody want to move to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Everybody in second. Agenda analysis. Does anybody want to move any items to the new business discussion items from communications?
I just don't want to forget having the couple of representatives on for the comp plan review committee.
What I emailed you earlier about from Pete Walter? Is that what you're referring to?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Why don't we talk about that during communications at the end?
Works for me.
Okay. Just FYI, when we talk about it, they're not going to actually have a meeting this month. He said that they're going to push it out until the middle of next month. So we've got a little bit of time, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Citizen comments. So just so everybody knows, when I put out the agenda and I posted it out for everybody, I put in there that if anybody wanted to watch the meeting or participate in the meeting to email me for the link to the meeting that we're doing right now. And then if anybody wanted to provide any citizen comments, that I would need to be emailed those prior to the beginning of this meeting. We have one citizen, Lisa Novak, who is in the audience, we'll call it, just sitting in not to participate, but to watch. I did not receive any citizen comments from anybody, so moving forward, we don't have any, as far as I know, and so we can move on from that.
Kim, real quick, I just want to check in with John Anderson because he indicated that maybe a couple people might be joining us. I don't know if they ever followed through on that, but Nick Dirkman and Don Slack. Did you hear anything from them, Kim?
No, I did not.
Okay. Is that okay with you, John?
Yeah, that's fine. I let them know the steps that Kim had outlined if they wanted to participate. So they had opportunity to do that.
Okay.
And moving forward, if we continue to keep doing these Zoom meetings, feel free to share. When I send you the email link for the meeting, you can share that with citizens so they can watch the meeting as well. It's just if they want to comment on something, we need to know what item they're going to comment on so we can make sure that we get them put in there somewhere.
And
And
one
we-
other thing, Kim, I just want to make sure, I know it shows up on the screen, different people's names, but Josh Wheeler, he's going to do presentation on the TGM grant, and he's our assistant city engineer. Dana Webb, who you've met as our city engineer. Vance, you know, he's assistant public works director. But Brian Van Smornberg, I don't know if you've met Brian, but he's project engineer for the Malala Avenue project, and he's also doing the Holcomb Boulevard Safe Routes to School grant presentation. So just want to make sure it's clear why those folks are on.
Awesome. Josh, can you hear us? I'm assuming
Yes.
so. Okay. So the first item up that we will be doing is the item 5A, Transportation Growth Management Grant, Park Place Urbanization Study Request for Letter of Support. And Josh Wheeler will be the one that's going to, he will be the one that will be presenting this. I will share my screen. So Josh, when you want me to advance the slide to the next one, just let me know.
I can share my screen if you want me to do it that way.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. That works for me.
Uh,
Do I need to make you a co-host, though? I think I do.
yeah, it looks like host disabled participant. So yeah, if you make it available for me, then I can do it.
All right. You should be good to go.
Yep. All right, everyone sees that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't
Okay.
that fancy?
Yeah. So I'm filling out a grant for the Park Place Urbanization Study, which is a TGM grant, Transportation Growth Management. The city has applied for these many times in the past. I believe with your packets, you got a draft letter of support that we're looking to have signed by the TAC. We're also going to the City Commission, the Planning Commission, the Citizen Involvement Committee, as well as the Park Place neighborhood. So I've reached out to all those. I'm on the agenda for all those or have already spoken. So here we go. What is the TGM grant? It's a state program administered by the Oregon Department of Transportation. Typically, it funds TSP plans or updates to TSPs, but it also funds other transportation planning, such as corridor plans. What kind of existing studies do we have that may or may not have been funded by a TGM grant, but could have been potentially? Our transportation system plan, commonly called the TSP, our Lynn-Leland-Myers corridor plan, our Malala streetscape plan, Holcomb pedestrian plan, and the Myers Road corridor. Also the South End concept plan, Park Place concept plan, Beaver Creek, which is now Thimble Creek concept plan, Beaver Creek Road access management, McLaughlin Boulevard enhancement. Those are all various studies that have been done over the past several years that could have used a grant like this if the funding would have allowed. So that's the type of thing that we're trying to fund here. How do we use these types of plans? They're referenced quite commonly during the land use process for private development. So for example, when a private development comes in on Malala Avenue, we make sure that they follow the Malala streetscape plan. Or a private development is on Lynn, Leland, or Myers, we make sure that they follow the standards in that corridor plan. It determines build out by the private developers, how they're supposed to widen the road, if curbs should be on the road, if sidewalk or a bike lane, where should that go and how wide should it be? It also can help us apply for grants for capital projects. It's not very often that we use the plans for capital projects just because the type of funding is rare and the amount of funding needed rarely assists with projects like that. However, we did use some capital funding for Myers and Malala, and so we use their plans when developing those projects that are currently going on as we speak. So what would this plan be? This would be, instead of a specific corridor, we're looking at a region, so the Park Place neighborhood, and it's the red shaped area there, everything that's not within the concept plan, which is in the bottom right corner of that map, and not within the upper right corner, which is the elementary, and as well as some property owned by another property owner that won't affect anything we're doing here because they're going to be doing brand new roads that the TSP will follow. What we're really looking at is how do we properly develop roads like Swan Avenue, Hunter Avenue, Apperson Front, Ames Street, Harley. Those are the type of roads we're looking at to go, have we been developing them properly over time? And as we continue, do we make them go from rural to urban? We'll also make sure we coordinate with that concept plan to make sure that we don't end up having a 30-foot road that ties into a 20-foot road, something like that. The Holcomb pedestrian plan to make sure that if we're going to propose certain sidewalks on certain streets, that it actually goes to something in a similar way, so the Holcomb plan. And then we're actually looking at a Safe Routes to Schools grant that I think I heard you may be hearing later tonight. We would make sure we tie into that as well to help guide that plan as well as help guide our plan. I already went over these details, but it's not just for road widening, it's also for sidewalks and bike lanes. What are we looking for? We're requesting $100,000 from the TGM grant program. We're looking to provide a $50,000 local match. We actually have in our city approved budget $100,000. So in this case, if we get the grant, we're only planning to use half of what we budgeted. We were originally going to go this alone, but then when the grant opportunity came up, we were like, hey, let's use less of the city budget and use grant funds. I gave you at the beginning the letters of support are coming from, and those are listed at the left. And that's your presentation. Are there any questions you may have for me, and would you be willing to support this grant application?
As chair, I'm certainly willing to sign off right now.
Thank
Of
you.
course, that's subject to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, I read the report. It looks good to me. You might emphasize if this project is approved, I guess, was it an August deadline date or what was it for that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I have to submit the grant by July 31st.
Okay.
And it's actually a fairly quick turnaround for the grant. They review the applications in August, and I believe they award in October, if I remember right. And then we would have a certain period of time to do it. We would likely get it done by the end of 2020. Take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to do.
Okay.
I have a question for Josh. It came up just now. Would having the school district sign off on it be appropriate?
That's another place that we could have got a letter of support from. We just chose not to go that far. We did reach Clackamas County because of the amount of housing they have in the Park Place neighborhood, but I was not able to get in touch with anyone. I've tried to contact them a number of ways and have not gotten any response from them.
Thank you.
Does that include sidewalks on both sides of Holcomb and a bike lane? Or is that just continuing the sidewalk all the way up Holcomb?
So the Holcomb pedestrian plan is the one that directs us how to do sidewalks along Holcomb. This plan would not do that because we've already done that with a separate study. So we would not be touching Holcomb with this plan because we feel like that's already been addressed by a different plan.
I'm curious about public engagement process with this because of coronavirus and not being able to meet in person for the foreseeable future. Are you looking at waiting until we're allowed to do in-person meetings, or are you planning on doing Zoom meetings for the engagement for this planning process?
So at this point, that's up in the air. We would not expect to start this project. Actually, the more I think about it, if we get it, it'll be awarded late this year. And then we have to go through a scoping process with ODOT, and that takes 3 to 6 months. So we might not be able to physically start on the plan until summer of 21. So it actually may take till 2022 to complete. And by that time, crossing our fingers, we're out of office. So, but if not, we're going to have to adapt and we'll adapt.
Cool. Thank you.
So just again, to clarify for me, the Park Place Urbanization Plan, the first bullet there lists the roads that you would be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And that include Swan both north and south of Holcomb or just north?
That's going to have to come out in the scoping process.
Okay.
What is $150,000 going to do for us? And that'll be determined between myself and ODOT and get on board. So those are the types of roads we'd like to look at. Those are probably our high priority roads. If we can do more, great. If we need to limit it to only north of Holcomb, because that's where most available development is, then we'll do that. But we're going to have to make that determination during scoping.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions from anybody?
I guess the only thing I'll just re-emphasize is that these kinds of studies are super helpful with development. As a development proposal comes in, often if we don't have a study like this, we're out trying to figure out what, maybe a neighboring development had, what, we think is needed, and that can be very subjective. So having clarity from a study like this, is helpful for, capital planning and any kind of projects like that. But more often than not, it informs development and what the developer is going to be required to build.
Just to add on that a little bit, having done Dana's job prior to the time at any of these grants were around, it does make it a lot easier than trying to figure out what's good and what's not on your own volition.
Absolutely agree with that.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion that we support the proposed letter of endorsement or support.
I second that motion.
Any discussion along the lines of, does it need to be changed at all, or should the one that's being presented to us be signed?
I didn't see any issues with the one I read through.
I didn't either, but I thought I would ask the question.
Okay, Henry, I'll get that signed, or you can get that signed and get it back to me, and then I can get it to Josh.
Sure, I can go down and do it, or you can email it to me.
So do you
Okay.
actually need a vote on that? We had a motion in a second.
Yeah,
But
we should vote on it.
Oh, sorry.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say something. Anybody who wants to abstain, just say so. I think it passed.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And unfortunately, I've got another thing to do, so I won't be able to stay on this meeting, but enjoy your evening.
Thank
Josh.
you.
thank you.
Okay. So moving forward, the next item is 5B, Holcomb Boulevard Safe Routes to School Grant Application Request for Letter of Support. And Brian, you will be doing this, correct? Oh, you're muted.
All right, I think I'm
All right.
unmuted now.
Would you like to, do you want me to do the slideshow?
Yeah,
like
you
we
could go
talked
ahead
about?
and advance it for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me get my screen up.
Oh, Nick, I'm glad you could make it.
Well, for some reason it's not sharing it.
Is this the school grant one? Does the school safe projects one?
Yeah,
I see it.
You see it? Okay.
Yeah, it's up.
Y'all can see that?
Yes.
All right. Okay, Brian, you're on. Maybe.
You're muted.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. I think I'm back to unmuted. So I'm Brian Van Smornberg, and I'm a civil engineer, a senior civil engineer for the engineering department there. And I'm also the project manager for this Holcomb Boulevard and Moala Avenue. Anyway, thank you for letting us come and talk about the Holcomb Boulevard Safe Route to School Infrastructure Grant project. This is a great opportunity to apply for a grant that will support the students' needs and community. So thank you again for having us. Let's move it on. Staff has reviewed the grant application in detail and having identified some of the key items that the grantor will be looking for in a successful application. The key items are to remove barriers that prevent the walking and riding to school. They look to fund the project around Title I schools first. The project with road speeds higher than 35 miles per hour are also given a higher priority. And they look at project readiness and also any upfront work that has been done would also be a benefit and give higher rankings. Next. So after reviewing the grant criteria that I just shared with you, we focused in on Holcomb Boulevard as it matches many of the key criteria and should compete well. Holcomb Elementary is a Title I school that gives it more of a priority. There is a significant amount of missing sidewalk, over 2,000 feet to the east of the school on Holcomb Boulevard, making walking and bicycling to school unsafe and difficult. There are currently no marked crosswalks along Holcomb Boulevard. The posted speed limit currently is 40 miles an hour with an average speed over 40 miles an hour. In 2005, the city, along with members of the community, created the Holcomb Boulevard Pedestrian Enhancement Plan. Since the adoption of that plan, the city has been successful in completing sections of the corridor through grants. We already have survey data and the city and have completed technical analysis necessary to move the project forward. And the Park Place neighborhood has shared with us, the city and with city staff, with you guys, the Transportation Advisory Committee and the Citizen Involvement Committee, along with the City Commission, a desire to see improvements in this area. Next. Over the last 6 months, staff has worked to identify a project that is not only meets the grant criteria, but also accomplishes the desires of the Park Place neighborhood. To do this, we followed the following process. We gathered initial input. In this phase, our goal was to understand what the community wanted. So staff sat down with the Park Place neighborhood representatives, attended a Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting, and discussed barriers to walking and biking to Holcomb Elementary School with the school district. The technical review on this, once we had a better understanding of the concerns and desires of the community and the school district, we set out to understand the technical aspects of the corridor. This included speeds, volumes, and reviewing safety, crossing locations, etc. The technical project feedback is kind of where we're at now. We've taken the initial input and the results of the technical review and have identified what we believe is a strong project that will not only compete well, but addresses many of the community concerns and desires. So now I'd like to walk you through the details of input gathered on this project. completion of the technical review and share the project that we believe meets the grant criteria, but also accomplishes the desires of the neighborhood. So when we attended the Park Place neighborhood, oh yeah, so you can move that forward, sorry. When we attended the Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting in February 2020, we shared this map with the group to give visual representation of the existing conditions and the project included in the transportation system plan. This map shows existing sidewalk and paths shown in green, as some of the missing sidewalk shown in red and blue. It also shows the 4 locations in the transportation system plan that we have identified for crossing solutions. Those 4 locations are shown as green dots and are located near Front Avenue, Swan Avenue, Oak Creek Terrace, and Winston Drive. At the Park Place, if you move forward, yep. At the Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting, where we had approximately 30 attendees who completed a short survey about the corridor. The survey asked various questions in an attempt to better understand how individuals use that corridor, how they feel when they use the corridor, and what they see as the most important roadway needs. We overwhelmingly heard and they felt that the corridor was unsafe. We also clearly heard their priority for the corridor was safer crossings. We value this feedback and have worked to address it in our proposed project. So if you move that forward. The staff has been working closely with the Oregon City School District. The school district currently has a supplemental busing plan, which allows the school to bus all students along the Holcomb Boulevard corridor. This is due to the lack of sidewalk and bicycle lanes, a high speed along the corridor, and the inability for the students to safely cross Holcomb. You move forward. Using the information gathered from the community, we worked with a consultant to confirm the ability to safely install marked crossings at the identified locations, and also the type of crossings that should be installed. We utilize the students' population for school district, as well as ridership numbers from TriMet to support this justification for the proposed crossings. And the data identified the needs at the crossings to help, and we use the data to identify the needs to help support this grant application. So with this information, we move forward with all 4 crossings. You go to the next. Now I'd like to walk you through the details of the project that we believe meets not only the grant criteria, but also accomplishes the desires of the neighborhood. This slide shows you locations of the proposed sidewalk as well as 4 pedestrian crossings, all which will include pedestrian activated flashing lights, new ADA compliant curb ramps, and street lighting. So based on what we heard and what we analyzed, all these project concerns and the work on getting the preliminary scope of the estimate together so that we could gather and input on the scope and gather support from the grant application. The high level view of what we heard were improve the 4 crossings along the corridor again and the Front and Swan, Oak Tree, and Winston Drive, and enhance the sidewalk on the east side of the school to allow students to walk and bike safely to school. So the next one here, this is a visual of what the improvement would look like for a user. The roadway would have 11-foot travel lanes, 5-foot bike lanes, and primarily add a 6-foot sidewalk along the north side of the street with a little addition of sidewalk and bike lanes on the south side of the street, as identified in the previous map. in the location of the Sears property east of Oak Tree Terrace on the north side of the road. There'd be an asphalt paved bike path. And it would be behind the drainage channel that's there. Next. So in summary, here are the recommendations for this project. With the estimated cost of $1.68 million, with the city's requested match of 20%, because of the Title I school, we can ask up to 80% funding. The city's match would be $334,000. That'd be 20% of it. And the grant funding would be $1.33,340,000. We have focused on the community's needs for RFB crossings at the 4 needed intersections and solve the pedestrians and bicyclists' needs east of the school by creating a way for the students to get to school safely. So if you move to the next one. As we work towards the August 31st deadline to apply for the Safe Route School Infrastructure Grant Program, we are looking for any questions or input you have on the project recommendation. And we have received support letters from the Oregon City School District so far, their superintendent, and the Holcomb Elementary school principal. We are looking for support letters from Park Place Neighborhood Association, which we have already presented to, and from your group, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and City Commission. The grant review timeline is pretty quick, and we should have results of which project will receive funding by the end of the year. And next, any questions?
Well, I've got one just to kick off the discussion, so to speak. Is there any reason why the missing sidewalks that are downhill from the Holcomb School weren't included?
So downhill on the
downhill side on downhill.
Yeah,
On
so there is sidewalks
on the
along
east.
Yeah. So there's on the east side of the road, so that'd be uphill.
Yeah.
Or the east side of the
from Front Avenue on up on the on what would be the right side on the map.
So the reason why those were not included was because it added such a significant cost, and it didn't add as much. The need wasn't as strong to get the kids to school. The crossing was kind of the main corridor, and we were trying to be within basically a matching fund that we could actually afford.
I have a question. Did I hear you correctly that first segment from Winston going west, the Sears property, there'd be an asphalt trail behind the current drainage ditch?
That's what we're proposing because we know that is being looked at to be redeveloped.
Right.
And
so
we didn't have. Oh, go ahead.
So when the developer comes in to develop the Sears property, you could, in essence, tear out the asphalt and put a typical urban street in there and sidewalk.
Correct. Yeah, and we didn't want to have it just destroy, or a whole new sidewalk and curb and so forth removed in certain areas, like for the driveway approaches and so forth.
Is there an estimate on the timeline for that development?
Well, they are in for an application I saw just recently.
This is Bob. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Are there going to be further discussions on the very, very exact location of each of those crosswalks?
So we'll take on any input that anybody can give us. We very much appreciate it.
Well, the very reason I ask is that the one at Oak Tree Terrace couldn't be in a poor position. If you go up there physically and look at the sight lines, it would be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, that was, Bob, that was the
Really
first
for-
thing I noticed. Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed on this project. It's it's in a dip there. We're at Oak Tree Terrace, and we were aligning the crossing so that it would be outside of the issue where we would have those problems for sight distance.
Yeah, okay, because that's, all right.
So in the slide that you have before this one, it shows a sidewalk on the north side. Okay, one more. Okay, you had a map that showed, okay, before that.
The very first map, I think. Yeah, that one.
Pretty small, yeah.
This dotted line that shows a sidewalk, does that exist right now, or is this a pipe dream right there?
Oh, that dotted brownish line?
Yeah.
That's a pipe, not a pipe. That is a path that is, planning is, I think through the Planning Commission has identified as a
That's
corridor, like pedestrian corridor.
That's a circle around Oregon City, John, that you were dreaming about at one time. And how solid is that? Is that something that ever is going to see the light of day?
I think a version of that you're going to see the light of the day. I mean, the questions are really around how we develop out the kind of the area south of Holcomb Boulevard, and some of it may be in the canyon. I question whether or not it's going to follow the creek like that. It may be more that it goes up Livesey Road, or Livesey Road. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I think the idea is we do want a loop trail, and this is part of it, how we get that loop trail established. On one end, outside kind of the Park Place area, is the old railroad grade. And I think this the bottom left corner of the slide kind of shows it down there, but that's also where the creek is at. So I do worry a little bit about impacts to our natural areas by, in terms of trying to build a trail. But there may be elements of it that, make sense to be there. We really haven't done a detailed or even it's really just a line on the map that shows that extended loop trail. We need another grant, Tim, so that we can do another corridor study on that loop trail.
All right.
The other thing I wanted to address was the timing of the development. It's a serious property. We struggle with development as to when things are really going to happen. And, but I would say that we just saw a pre-application meeting come up on our calendar for that. And if I don't even know, is Josh still on? He may know a little bit more about that, but I just got an invite to that pre-app meeting, which I probably won't attend, but yeah, they're talking at least, and that's more than what we've seen on this piece of property anytime in the past. It is a relatively, I would say, it's an easier piece of property to develop than, say, some of the areas on the kind of the south side of Holcomb.
I got a question for Ray. Yeah, I want to know if he's got any thoughts on the bicycle width at 5 feet on Holcomb.
I was actually going to ask a question about that because I noticed the design that was used was based on 2005 plan. And is there any flexibility to make it based on 2020 design standards instead of 2005. I know it's more expensive, but 2020 they don't use normal painted lines anymore. They put buffers or protection in there and not just a line of paint. So is there any flexibility with that design?
So I would refer this to Dana, but there are really heavy constraints on right-of-way in this area, but I'll refer it to Dana.
Anybody got the hot potato?
So
Well, let's go back to that map of that area again.
Just a second. Let's let
Um,
Dana respond.
So, at this point, we're attempting to implement that Holcomb plan. Like Brian mentioned, we're
that map
pretty
there.
tight with right-of-way. In fact, that sidewalk on the north side to kind of get that piece in requires retaining walls. We can look at kind of the points we're connecting into, but at some point, if you've only got a 5 foot in the built section to the east, are you widening it out for, 1,000 feet where we're putting in the permanent sidewalk, and we wouldn't be widening it where we're putting the interim asphalt path? We can look at that and see what we can fit in. Each additional foot is more impact to those adjacent properties. And so it's balancing that, looking at how close those structures are to the right-of-way line.
So are the existing sidewalks and road structure like above Swan currently this 11 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot cross section? Is that, because I know at that point the road widens at Swan. So is this reflective of that structure? So it's all tying in the same?
I think so. I know that
Right.
Holcomb plan had a couple of different cross sections where I think it widened in maybe one area. I know we've got a little bit of a turn lane kind of on that east end in one spot.
Okay.
I'm also curious if there's not ability to widen the bike lane, if it'd be better to do a shared use path. So create a wider sidewalk, so then cyclists share this sidewalk and have that great separation from the drivers are. And is that a possibility? Like maybe, I don't know how wide a sidewalk is, but extend to be like a 10-foot wide sidewalk instead of 5 feet. So you have more protection from the cars.
So we could talk about that. We could look at that.
When you run into a problem though, that you're only that, again, somebody mentioned earlier that we're talking about 1,000 foot section here, then it's going to be mismatched. So you're going to have a nice wide path like that for 1,000 feet. Then it's going to go back to your existing structure.
Good point.
Ray, I agree with you in the fact that this is not going to be a biking commuting route at all. It ends at Holcomb School. I mean, nobody's going to ride further than that. The roads there are just way too narrow, way too windy, way too undulating for visualization of cars to bikes right there. So a wide sidewalk that would allow for bikers and pedestrians would be the solution, especially for young kids just riding to school.
Well, the reason I wanted that map brought up is because it shows a planned sidewalk with development on the north side, just west of Oak Tree Terrace. Just a little short section there. And that particular section was we just had an opportunity to have a developer actually put that sidewalk in and allowed them for a fee in lieu of, which
Right.
we're understanding that fee in lieu of will be held for that exact location. My question is, why do we let the developer away with that? Because as I noted before in another meeting, by the time that sidewalk is built, it will be more expensive to have it built than what the fee in lieu of was. So why didn't we have them built in the first place? And then also in that same area, on the south side of Holcomb Boulevard, there in that dotted area, it would take quite a lot of fill material to make it wide enough for a sidewalk. And I think that it probably, by the time you got the fill in there, it'd be so close to people's front doors, they would strongly resist that. So, you know, there's some real huge problems right in that exact area.
That or a retaining wall with handrails.
Yeah. And that's why in between Oak Tree Terrace and where the school is on the south side, we aren't proposing that portion.
Yeah, that's probably the most difficult portion of the whole, all of Holcomb Boulevard. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Anybody have any suggestions about the letter of support? Anybody want to make a discussion of that?
One thing I'll add about this idea of a shared use path, you know, the right way to do those is usually in the uphill lane because the bicyclists are really, you know, struggling to get up the slope. So that's where we have the least amount of existing sidewalk now. So there is some merit to looking at that, whereby you put the shared use path where the, you know, the bike lane stripe is at, and you carry that all the way over to the sidewalk. And, you know, that would, I'm not sure, we'd have to either redo or extend somehow those sections of sidewalk that exist. I don't know if that, how well that lines up, but the idea is shared use uphill and downhill, either the bike lane as is. Most of that edge is pretty well created. And I guess the other element to that is if you are a bicyclist on Holcomb Boulevard, which again, I don't think it's a family-friendly kind of a route. It's more like a cyclist who's, you know, experienced riding in the roadway would have that. We talked a little bit about something like that on, in fact, the concept plan for Lynn Avenue as it goes up beyond 5th Street up through the McLaughlin neighborhood. We came up with a section that looked kind of like that, where bicyclists would have a lane, but it wasn't on the downhill lane, but it wasn't, you know, anything, you know, wider than 5 feet, but the uphill lane, it was a 10-foot sidewalk. So pedestrians could safely walk along there because the bicyclist was probably going at a pretty low rate up the incline. And so, and it wouldn't, you know, the bicyclists would feel safer in that kind of an environment than they would in a bike lane.
I'd also added that some cities, when they have a hill situation, they put the uphill, you know, bike lane or shared use path, and then on downhill they put sharrows, because the bike is going fast enough that's basically the same speed as a car sometimes. If they can, you know, speed going downhill, they can just, you can use, if you have limited right of way, they can just put sharrows in going downhill and then create a wide path going uphill. That's another possibility.
That's a 40-mile-an-hour zone through there, so I don't know that you want to be using.
That's true. 40 miles. Yeah, that's kind of fast.
The bikes might slow down to 40 miles an hour, maybe.
Maybe Ray pedals faster than average.
I'll pedal fast.
Once more, the question about the letter of support.
I was just going to add real quick, if we support the letter and moving forward, you know, is this a 10,000 foot view, but through this process, or how beholden to this concept once hypothetically it's all approved? Is there going to, Brian, is there going to be room for discussion if this was to be approved and we got the grant? You know, some of these details we're talking about now, there's going to be opportunity down the road to fine tune that plan?
I think we have about till the time we actually make the application, or we send in the application, probably to pretty much nail down what we want to do.
Okay, so if we move forward with support, this exact plan is what we're moving forward with.
We still have time to adjust until August 31st with some other input, though.
Okay.
But we're looking at least this location for improvements.
Okay.
I think the answer to your question is we're probably looking at we're probably looking pretty hard at the Holcomb Boulevard concept plan to establish our estimate and our scope. If we want to deviate from that, there was a fair amount of work that went into that concept plan back when it happened, albeit, you know, different thinking processes have come out with bicyclists, with cycle tracks and all those, you know, shared use things. So I think internally we'd have to have a conversation. I think this is good feedback for us to talk through.
Absolutely.
Maybe we get back in the office and, you know, we put our heads together around how much difference there would be from a, you know, a sidewalk, bike lane on one side and a shared use or wider sidewalk all the way up the other side. That what I don't recall, and maybe Dana or Brian can answer, but on this grant application, on that uphill side, is there much sidewalk being proposed?
So on the uphill side between...
On the uphill side of the road, yeah.
Yeah, the uphill side, the sidewalk would be from Holcomb School Road, which is the entrance there to the school, along there all the way up Holcomb Boulevard on the north side to Winston Drive, or sorry, to Oak Tree, where the crossing is at Oak Tree Terrace. And then from there would be the multi-path, the ped and bike path.
I think to answer your question, John, that's the downhill side of the road.
Right. Yeah. So what I don't recall is whether or not we're proposing much sidewalk in what would be the uphill lane under this grant application. That's what I need an answer for, Brian. What are you?
So are you talking on the, I want to be clear on this. So are you talking on the south side of the road?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So on the south side of the road, all we have in this application would be a portion of the sidewalk, and bike lane that would complete that side of the road between Oak Tree Terrace and the subdivision that's to the east.
It's about
Looks like-
200 feet of infill.
Yeah, 200 is what it says on this map.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, I think for the most part, the north side of the road, or what I'm calling the downhill lane, is pretty much set, right? I mean, most of that work is done. Streetlights are in. We're not really going to ever propose moving that curb line. So, and this grant would complete more of that north side. And what we're talking about is getting a wider sidewalk on the south side, or again, the uphill kind of a directional. And so I think for this grant, we're probably not going to have too much, a little bit, sounds like a couple 100 feet that we could maybe kind of look at harder and see if that's the appropriate section for that side of the road for any future projects.
John, is the low-income housing, is that housing project just to the west of Holcomb Elementary School with all those small little houses? That is on the books to be sold as high-rise area right there? Is it? Do you know the plans, the tentative plans for that? And will that developer have to go ahead and put in sidewalks?
So I'm not sure about what you mean by high rise, but I've heard, and this is really just talk. We've seen nothing in terms of application, but you know, at one point in time, the county who owns that development was looking at taking out the housing that's there today and converting that area and selling it to a development that could build more of the traditional single family homes in that area. And then the proceeds from that they would use to supplement affordable housing somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But we've not seen anything that's been discussed. I've heard it in county meetings before, but you know, nothing that we know of no transactions have been made. And then I guess the other point was the sidewalk along their frontage is done. So, you know,
it's actually one of the best stretches of sidewalk on that road.
Right.
It is.
Swan and the school. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's where naturally extending it up further up the hill with the same look and feel and distance, I think would probably be a very good integration.
Yeah. There'll be new sidewalks. If they were to redevelop that, there'd be new sidewalks internal to any development there, but which would also help, because I generally think families are a little hesitant to put their grade school age children on Holcomb anywhere.
John, when a developer comes through and say that the housing authority does sell it to a developer, you may have the opportunity to talk to them about widening that abutting sidewalk. Because in a lot of places it's up against the back of the curb, right? So the sidewalk is fairly narrow. So as the developer goes through that process, you could require that they make the current sidewalk, say, 4 feet wider and make it much more pedestrian comfortable. You're not tearing the stuff out, you're just adding width to it and having the developer dedicate an additional street for this wider sidewalk all the way up and down the line there.
Yeah, that would be, you know, that would be more impactful, and we'd probably have to figure out how to fund some of that. And it would be contrary to what we have in the adopted plan. But yeah, I'm definitely liking the idea, or more supportive of the idea of taking a facility that's in the adopted plan that's 5 feet wide bike lane, asphalt bike lane, turning that into a, you know, basically just converting it to a concrete sidewalk versus, you know, having more impact on the on that frontage and any other frontage down the road. You know, to take an additional 4 feet. I don't know if the right of way is there or not, but we'd have to look at that. But I hear some desire for additional pedways, additional width of the pedways, whether it's existing or not. And so we'll have to look at that. I know for that edge right there, John, in particular, it would not only mean additional right away for the sidewalk, it would either mean a structured wall or you know, more slope easement behind it, right? Because it's a pretty steep bank.
Mm-hmm.
So since this application is due by August 30th, if there's some more things staff can look at and bring back to the next TAC meeting, does that still work for staff and your timelines? If you're going to answer some of these questions about making any modifications or looking at some of these other walkway changes.
So the next TAC meeting is when?
A month.
Yeah.
If we,
And Brian, let's see, we've hired a consultant. I don't remember who we hired to help us put this.
Dow.
Yep. So I think I'm willing to have some conversations with them. I think my my sense is we're probably on budget with them to kind of look at some concepts pretty consistent with what the plan says.
Yeah.
I think we could ask them some general questions, but I don't think we're going to get in that time frame, John. I don't think we're going to get. Well, I would just say the quality of the product that we bring back is going to be look like something that we just asked for. So I think it's a lot to ask of the design team right now,
Okay.
consultant team.
But is the general consensus of everybody on the committee here that a larger sidewalk that would accommodate bikes and pedestrians better than 6 feet of bike path on either side of that open boulevard?
I think for continuity of what you've got as a design of the whole coming up the hill and tying into existing structure, my opinion is you go with the proposed plan here and tie into what's there and keep it simple and keep it moving forward.
I would agree myself. I would agree with Ben.
I mean, would it be better in the long term if we tore everything out and put wider sidewalks in and it was free? Go for it, yeah, but that's not the situation we're in. We've got a timeline, we've got a budget, and we've got an existing structure. So I think what they've presented to us is probably the likelihood of what's going to occur. May not be perfect, but cost-wise and time-wise, I think we need to move forward with this plan.
I agree with that too, especially with the consistency issue.
Yep.
Whatever they do, it's going to last for the next 25 to 30 years.
And it's a heck of a lot better than what's there now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not to worry, Henry, you'll still be on the TAC committee then.
Yeah, I'll only be 100 years old.
So with that, I would
still,
go
I
ahead.
still worry about the proposition of putting that sidewalk on the south side of Holcomb Boulevard, there between Oak Tree Terrace and the housing project.
I don't think that part of it's proposed in this.
Walk that exact area. There's a steep incline directly from Holcomb Boulevard down into people's property. That's why I said it would require a lot of infill and acquisition of people's property there on the south side. And well, of course, acquisition of property on the north side also, but
Bob,
I don't think
this is
it's
John. Maybe we can clarify that. I think I heard Brian say that they weren't planning to do that section, even though there seems to be a orange dotted line along there. You weren't planning to do that in this project.
Yeah, you look at the other maps. They moved to the other map.
The
Down.
frontwards or backwards?
It's down, yeah. There.
There you go.
So you can see where the pedestrian crossing is. And
yeah,
Oak Tree Terrace.
yeah.
Just that one portion in there going east on Holcomb.
So Bob, all they're proposing is from Oak Tree up the hill to tie into the existing sidewalk, which is a 200-foot stretch going up the hill.
I see. Okay, so they would not be proposing.
There wouldn't be anything going down the hill from Oak Tree.
No. And that section right there.
That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that section right there is not. It doesn't go down. It goes up to the house.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thus the retaining walls.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that clarifies it with me. I was stuck with that sidewalk being on an additional sidewalk being on the south side of Holcomb there, and I kept thinking, wow, boy, that's going to be a project and a half.
So are we looking for a motion then to go ahead and sign the letter of approval? Is that what we're looking for?
Yes, please.
Okay, I would move that we adopt the letter and sign it with approval.
Second.
Okay, now, is there anybody who want to discuss the letter as to any of the content of the letter?
Well, if you get online, well, I don't know if it's online or not. It's Park Place Neighborhood Association has already drafted a very good letter, I thought. To take a look at that one, why something similar to that, I think would be pretty good.
There is one in our packet already. Is the one from the Neighborhood Association considerably different?
It's fairly similar.
What's the key difference?
Oh, just different points that are identified, but they're all the same when it comes to what we're proposing.
Yeah, I read the proposed letters of John, and it looked fine to me.
It looked fine to me, but I was wondering if we could throw in a couple of modified weasel words so that we could cover some of the changes that we were talking about.
Well, Henry, since you're going to be signing the letter, aren't you also going to write it?
Well, now, I thought Brian and Dana were a lot better writers than I am. After all, they know what the grant needs, and if I write it, it might not match what the grant needs.
Well,
I
I guess
call the question to vote on the draft letter. We had a motion in a second. So.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
based off of the existing letter.
It's been called for. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Looks like I got another letter to sign.
Yep. Okay.
Well, thank you very
so-
much.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Appreciate
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you making that work.
All right. Well, thank you.
Hey,
You have a great
Good.
evening.
thanks, Brian. Hey, Kim, can I share my screen now?
Yes, you may.
All right. So we're just going to go through this as quickly as we can. I know there's a little bit that Vance is going to take on first. Vance, are you awake out there? I don't even see your picture anymore.
I'm here, John.
All right. Thank you for that. So this is your June Public Works report, and Vance is going to take the first slide.
All right. I believe the first slide is the Molalla Pearl intersection.
Hold on a second here.
Yep.
I'm not sure why it's not advancing for me. There you go.
All right, gentlemen. We've discussed this intersection many times over the last a year and a half. As you all know, there were 2 accidents, 2019, 1 fatality, 1 young man injured. We hired EKS to perform a road safety audit, which they did. They came back with many recommendations. If you recall, we had a engineer from DKS present to to you folks several months ago. So the good news is, since then, we have worked with Clackamas County, and we've done a bunch of improvements, and you should see them on your screen. So DKS, let me back up. They did give us short-term safety improvements and some long-term safety improvements. We have completed all of the short-term safety improvements to include the split phasing on Pearl, leading pedestrian interval, protective permissive left turn phasing on Molalla, the signal back plates with the retro reflective borders and supplemental signal heads, Internally, our transportation division restriped Pearl Street and the relocation of the no turn on red. There are also large traffic pattern change ahead signs on all 4 legs, 2 on Malala, 2 on Pearl. Those will remain up for a bit longer, just to let motorists know that there has been a traffic pattern change. This work, the county started late March, and they picked away at it. They got everything completed in early May. The majority of the work happened in April. So far, I've only heard good things from mainly staff that have noticed the changes. I've not heard anything on my end from citizens with any sort of concerns of what we hired the county to do. I hope that most of you have seen and noticed some of the improvements. And if you haven't had opportunity to drive that intersection, you know, next time you're bored and out on a Sunday drive, I'd encourage you to not only just drive through on Malala, but take the time to drive Pearl in each direction. I'm especially interested to hear what you think of the striping changes we did. In conjunction with the striping changes, we did remove 2 parking spots that are adjacent to that business right there. We coordinated with that business, let them know what we needed to do. They were fully supportive of that. So all in all, I couldn't be happier with the work the county did for us, the recommendations from DKS. On the long-term safety improvements, those are things that, frankly, we need to budget in next budget cycle. They're not the low-hanging fruit that was indicated on the short-term improvements, but I think we intend on pursuing most, if not all, of the long-term improvements. So that is my update for Malala and Pearl. And again, if any of you on the board have driven that, noticed, I'd really like to hear what your opinion is.
I have a not a question or suggestion, but having looked at that off and on for the past, what is it, 3 or 4 months since that building was removed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if there's a way to have the replacement building require a bit of a setback from Malala to improve the vision downhill, so that when people come up and use that intersection, they get a better chance to see what's coming up the hill.
Yeah, absolutely, Henry. Interestingly enough, when I first noticed that building being demoed, I got with Josh Wheeler, who you heard from earlier, and asked that question. And he was already on it, which isn't surprising. Josh is very good about being very aware of things like that. So the answer is, as far as I know, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer is yes. Whatever is going to go back in there should have a more substantial setback compared to what was there previously. So a very valid concern, Henry, and it's one that staff here at Ori City share with you.
The rest of it I like.
One thing I want to add to that, because Henry, we've got a community conversation coming up about some code changes that Public Works has been pressing for, and again, I think Josh is leading the charge there because a lot of it's development related. But one of the things that we have in our design standards, which aren't, so if you think about, you know, just kind of the directives and the regulation that we have, you've obviously got the charter and the code, and then, you know, and things like design standards and master plans start falling below that. But in our design standards, we have requirement for public utility easements behind the property line, and but then, you know, through years of kind of land use planning, there's also been this suggestion for key corridors like Malala Avenue to move buildings to have 0 setbacks, right? So that it has that more pedestrian I guess, amenity feel, more of a Main Street kind of a feel. And we've been kind of jockeying around, debating that to some degree with our planners, who, you know, are trying to build a vibrant community, and we get that. We kind of, you know, it's not like we got extremely wide sidewalks along Malala Avenue either. So we've been pushing hard a little bit to get to maintain those setbacks far enough back so that we can get in the public utilities, which would then kind of do the same thing you're asking for, which is to set that building back. And this case here, I think we're going to have some momentum on that, assuming a building were to come in anytime soon. But we'd like to change that so that our design standards are represented in code with regard to building setbacks, so that we have you know, at least a 5-foot PUE and preferably a 10-foot PUE. Does that make sense?
Makes it perfect sense. I mean, if you compare the old White Market building with what's not on the other side of the street, you'll see a marked difference in visibility.
Yeah, correct. Any other comments from the board? All righty, folks. Thank you very much. By all means, if you think of something after the fact, feel free to reach out to me. But in a nutshell, again, very pleased with the improvements that went on there. And John and I will be discussing in the next budget cycle how we can budget for these long-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know everybody's familiar with this boulevard as well. This is further south on Malala Avenue, so just beyond where we talked about, probably a mile or so. As part of the city's ongoing effort to increase safety in our community, we requested that Oregon Department of Transportation view the speed limit on Malala Avenue. And we wanted that to happen really between May Street and Highway 213. When we started looking at Highway 213 and the project that we have really that stems from Beaver Creek, actually we've extended it a little bit with some of our striping to include the section in front of the Hilltop Mall. But really when we started looking at speed through there and some of the safety improvements, you know, we realized that we thought that the speed limit should probably be lowered, and from what it was currently posted at 35, but we didn't want get it lowered and then have a short section really between Beaver Creek and May Street. So May Street, if you aren't familiar with that, is several blocks to the north. It's not quite to Holmes Lane, but it's one of those side streets in there. So so anyway, ODOT has responsibility, as you know, to investigate and designate all of our public roadways. And as far as speeds, that's something they do by statute. And to do this, ODOT completes an engineering study which looks at various roadway characteristics, including traffic volumes, travel speeds, crash history, geometry of the road, and roadside development. And I think they also kind of considered our project, our safety project, from, again, Beaver Creek to Highway 213. And ODOT has determined that the speed should be dropped 5 miles to 30 miles per hour along Malala Avenue. And one of the things that they noted was a high crash rate. So we know there's a lot of crashes along Malala Avenue. A lot of that's got to do with just the volumes of traffic that use Malala Avenue. So we have since, I think Vance's crew has actually placed the sign. So you may have noticed the mile per hour change. And if you're not paying attention and you're used to doing 35, you better watch your speed. You might get a ticket if you're not careful. So I think it's all posted 30 miles an hour now. And I love this graphic that Dana found this, and I've seen it show up in other presentations before. Just kind of shows a sense of different rates of speed. And, you know, if you get hit by a car at 30 miles per hour, you know, you've got a 60% chance of survival. And if you know, depending on that, there's lots of potential for you not. And obviously the faster you goes, the potential drops. So there's so many improvements along Malal Avenue that are going to come out of this almost a mile long project. I think it's going to be, you know, so good for the community as far as a safety aspect. It'll mean traffic moves along that corridor slower though. And that's probably not a bad thing, especially if you're a bicyclist or a pedestrian.
I agree.
Any questions about that?
I have a suggestion. As a avid cyclist, yeah, I'm very aware of where people are riding on busy streets and how dangerous things can be. And even though the Malala 7th Street is a road that is direct and it takes people up to the top of the hill, Lynn Avenue is so much of a safer place to ride than Malala is. Is there any way that the signage can be improved to say biking route this way? I mean, it's only a safety improvement. I mean, Malala is not a real safe bike place, and you don't want to take your kids on that, unlike, you know, Lynn Avenue, although it is a big hill, and, you know, if you're not in shape, you're walking up the hill, it's certainly a better place to ride.
I think, yes, we can do some things. It's been a while since I looked at the bike routes and what we have for signage now, Tim. But my recollection is we do divert bicycle traffic off of 7th Street, and I think we diverted onto 12th. Maybe you know, I mean, maybe you know, but my recollection is down near in the McLaughlin neighborhood, there's some signage that diverts that bike traffic onto one of the side streets to get up to, you know, Taylor, up in that area, Division, where Division comes in. But then there's kind of that disconnect where a bicyclist, there's not a through connection necessarily to get them further up Malal Avenue. So then they kind of have really only one option if they're on that side of town. If we diverted bicycle traffic all the way over to 5th and then Lynn Avenue, we'd have to look at that. So I don't know, Vance, can you work with Jason to kind of better evaluate that, and maybe we can talk more about what that might entail at a future meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, be more than happy.
I think that's a good recommendation, Tim. Are you okay with that?
Oh yeah. No, I think that going uphill on 7th Avenue, it's virtually impossible to be safe going up and around the Eastham School. And then up where the speed limits are currently 35, but they're going to go down to 30. I mean, that's still not a real safe place. You don't want to bring little kids on that. Whereas Lynn Avenue all the way to Myers really is the way that the city should be directing cyclists, because it is the safest route through town.
We do have some pinch points along there too. I know, you know, that's part of the idea of the Lynn Leland Myers Road corridor plan. It'd sure be nice to build that boulevard out too. But we can't take them all on. So good suggestion. Anything else on this one before I move on? All right, let me click forward there. So we are moving into, so we just talked about the project a little bit, talk about it a little bit more. And really, if you want to get the latest update and meet the contractor and the city's consultant who's kind of overseeing consultant, Brian and Dana are kind of leading this construction virtual open house. We've joined the 21st century and all these COVID meetings. So trying to hold a large meeting like that is going to be interesting. It's so stressful for me. I'm going to take the day off work and not experience that at real time. So Dana and Brian are on their own there pretty much, but That's this Thursday, 2 days from now, and you can log in. So what I noticed on the city's website is it's really easy. You just go to our website and it's one of the main articles there. You can click on that and it gives you a link to get in and get invited to that. They'll go over the construction schedule and how that's going to impact you on a daily basis if you use Molalla. As you travel through that corridor, you'll see intermittently along the corridor all kinds of things going on. And so anyway, you can sign up for that presentation, and I think it'll be a good one. I hope we get lots of participation. We're also going to record it, and I don't know how that's going to be made available. That's how I'm going to watch it when I get back from vacation. I'm going to watch it and see how it goes. So
we'll post it on the Molalla project page, and it'll also be on the city's YouTube page.
There you go.
John, Dana and Brian, I got a question for somebody. Would it be reasonable and proper to have some sort of a weekly, this is the kind of work that's going to be done on Molalla Avenue on the website, so as we go through the construction work, the people going up to post office and Fred Meyers and such would have a expectation of what they might run into before they get there?
We've talked a little bit about that. I might put that to Dana because I don't think Brian's on the phone anymore, but we heard a little bit something similar to that with the neighborhood. I can't, there was a response. I don't remember how often we were going to do those updates, but Dana, can you refresh my memory on what we were thinking there?
So right now, what we're kind of planning for is a monthly update at the first of the month. That coincides with the city's Nextdoor posting as well. So if you're a part of that group and you see those postings on Nextdoor, we also have a Molalla Avenue email subscription list. And so at the beginning of each month, that monthly update would go out to those groups. So we'll do that monthly. We were nervous about doing it every 2 weeks because we felt like that might be too much for folks. But if we're hearing from people that are interested in every 2 weeks, we can do that. We just didn't want to fill everyone's email inbox in with information that wasn't pertinent.
Based on my many years of work as project engineer, I think you're going to find that project moving along a little faster than once a month being adequate.
So right now, they think it'll be a little bit slow moving. And this is a little bit of what we'll be sharing at the open house. In that first month, they'll be working purely on waterline work between Beaver Creek and Claremont. And they think that'll take about a month. There's an 18-inch water line and an 8-inch water line to put in. After that, kind of through the fall, they'll work on the east side of the corridor. So traffic will be squished to the west side, so the Joann's and the Burgerville side of the road with 2 lanes, and they'll be working on that east side along Goodwill and Fred Meyer. And that'll be fairly consistent through the end of 2020. They anticipate, at least based on their schedule now, that early 2021, they'll move traffic over to that Fred Meyer side and start the work on the west side where the Burgerville and the Joann's and some of those other. So they really, it's over a mile long from end to end. So they don't anticipate huge changes regularly. They'll work along the corridor. What we will do is when we have things, so some of the intermittent impacts that we anticipate would be closure of some of the side streets. So for a short period of time, Gaffney will be closed and you will have to detour around. The same would occur at Claremont and some of those other connections to Molalla, because the road project includes full reconstruction of the pavement. So 19 inches deep for rebuilding the roadway. It's really difficult to maintain traffic when you need to dig that deep and rebuild the road. And in those cases, we would do a special update on the webpage. We would do a special update to the email list, and we would work with our social media group to share those things. And those would be, you know, in advance, we'll know they're happening, and we'll talk about where your detour routes would be.
Dana, if I may, as you may or may not know, I when this all started, when we started discussing the Malala Avenue project, I was making reports to the Chamber of Commerce, and that was well over a year ago. And time went on, and then within the last few months, they all went, "What's this Malala Avenue project?" And I had to remind them that it was the thing I'd been telling them about for a year. Anyway, so short story there is, if you could make a special effort to reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and make sure they're included, and so that they can inform their members as to what's going on, that would be much appreciated.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah, my recollect is they've been on our radar. So I don't know if they've read the newsletters, but they're getting them. But and yeah, I think the suggestions that we're hearing might be something that we continue to adjust to, especially if we see predictability of where the contractor is kind of bouncing around a little bit. Then to me, it makes more sense. Right now, we're kind of hoping that because of the length of the corridor and the length of the blocks, it's you know, the progression will follow in a pretty orderly manner. But if we need to be doing more updates, we sure can. And by the way, I just want to say our intent is to provide access to all the businesses throughout the project to at least one of their entrances and exits. And that there may be some nighttime work just to make sure places like the fire station and the post office, for instance, you know, we're not affecting, you know, drive-up traffic there. But I mean, we're going to affect drive-up traffic. I just mean we're not going to close it. So just spread the word that businesses are open, at least those that are open under the COVID-19 opening. But we're going to try and support those folks as much as we can, and we hope the community does too. With that, I'm going to move to the next slide, unless there's more questions. So this is a project that some people are interested in. If you use South End Road at all, you've seen some of the road changes in the pavement. Again, South End Road from really South 2nd Street to the top of the hill is a county road. They're the road authority, and they've been pursuing a design project through a grant to better understand what the needs along that slide area are to fix that on a more permanent basis. And we've seen a fair amount of information from the county and their consultant team. It's really a multi-jurisdictional project, even though the county's definitely running the project. They've just invited the city, and ODOT is the grantee, so ODOT is at those meetings. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to get to a couple of the design meetings where they've provided information on their geotechnical analysis. David Evans is the lead consultant on that. We've worked with David Evans before. And Shannon and Wilson is the geotech. And most of this project is about a geotechnical design, geotechnical and structural. So they've done a lot of geophysical surveys, geotechnical explorations. The results of that, I'm not going to go deep into, but I just thought I'd show a little graphic. The last I heard, they're talking about more of a cantilevered soldier pile wall, which is basically, you know, deep set piles that are driven down through the various layers of the slide plane, and you know, cantilevered. So they're talking some areas there may be justification for tying that back into the slope, and other places where they wouldn't do that, they would just use this cantilevered soldier pile. But that's what they're looking at. They're trying to get as much of that work in this grant as possible. And I don't have a good timeline for that right now, but they're definitely working through the design process. So I wanted to let you know that it is a significant slide area. It's not an overly active slide area in the sense that it's not something that's going to catastrophically fail. It definitely moves when when we are in a wet winter period, which is true for a lot of Oregon City slides, by the way. So, this has been a dry year, and the last few have been dry. So small creeping movements, but nothing major, which is kind of what we hear from the geotech is what they would predict as well. So that's all, just a short update. I know enough to be dangerous on this one. Okay. So, Trillium Park Drive, behind the hospital. It's another slide area. We've talked about it before with you. We met with the neighborhood in February, and there was community residents. There's some frustration with the city on this one because the road closed, and it's, we haven't done much with it other than close the road and kind of channelize some of the drainage. But we've done a fair amount of monitoring. So we continue to monitor to work towards, detecting and documenting any additional slide activity. To date, through the regular monitoring of, we've got 4 inclinometers out there that we're measuring, I think quarterly right now. And we're also measuring groundwater. This is another slide that's activated by wet winters. And we haven't seen any of those for a couple of winters. So not much ground movement, if any at all, has been detected. So it's stable from that perspective, although we feel like if we were to see another really wet winter with saturated subsurface groundwater, this does get saturated and will continue to move. This is in the Newell Canyon, so kind of predictable soil conditions for up there. In addition to the roadway, there's utilities that were in this slide area. So we've abandoned the water line, the power lines, and the gas lines. Those have all been abandoned, but we still have a gravity sewer line in this section of road. So phase 1 looked at, trying to move the sewer. So I've got a better slide for that. But there's also a private residence up there that we're still kind of struggling to get more action on that property. City had an agreement with that property owner they would do the demo work of all the wood frame portion of the house, and we would they would sign the property over to us, and we would demo the foundation and then use that area as needed to construct our site and then restore it. And so far we're having trouble with that property owner getting them to follow their settlement agreement. So we're looking at various options as to how we might make that happen, but just know that work continues. Yeah, so on the next slide, one of the first pieces was, what are you going to do with this road? All the various alternatives required a fairly deep excavation to get rid of the overburden over that roadway and lighten that load one way or another, and that kind of put this sewer line right in the way. So the proposal was to move the sewer line up slope, and but yet still very, very deep, deeper than the slide plane. And so we've done this before. We did it on Peterskeen Road, where we basically open a large pit on either end, and we use guided boring that's gotten precise enough to actually be able to lay a gravity pipeline on a precise slope. We did it in both Peterskeen and up off of Hazelwood. We've done it, and we can do it on a radius path as well. So that's kind of our plan. We've hired RH2 to move forward with the design and bid documents for that. And our hope is to actually build it yet this year. It is in a geologic hazard area, and our code kind of limits our construction window to October 31st. So we may not be able to get it out. We're kind of working hard with the consultant to see how far we can get with that. But if we don't get it this year, we'll get it next year. And the hope being we get it done in 2021. And then the second phase of that is really we looked at several options, and I can't remember if we presented, I think we might have presented that report to the TAC. Do you remember, Henry?
I don't remember seeing it, but that doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I can't quite remember, but it seems like something we would have presented. But anyway, we again hired RH2 to do along with GRI, who's the geotech, to look at different alternatives. And a lot of them, there was like removal of all the soil, just close the road, just let it continue to slide. There was removal of all the soil and leave it closed. The one that we've landed on has been removal of all the soil, put back one travel lane and maintain the pathway through there. There's good sight distance from one end to the other. So many of you have traveled county roads where you come to a narrow bridge and you look for oncoming traffic. If you don't see oncoming traffic, you move through it. That's kind of the idea here. The other element to this would be, instead of using, traditional gravel backfill, we'd use low unit weight fill. Lots of times you see that in foundations that are for buildings on steep slopes, and roadways use it as well. There's been some good work in some of our counties in using that. They're kind of the experts in dealing with road slide outs like this. So anyway, it'd be a pretty deep excavation, pretty significant backfill, but backfill with a low unit weight material, and then fix the natural areas to return back to natural. Below this is all kind of the Newell Canyon, so it's just a natural area. Reestablish there's a storm drain that flows through there, so reestablish that, and really kind of improve the area, as including removal of the house that's been condemned, and changing all that slope back to the natural slope. So we don't have the funding for this. This is about $1 million project. We've got the funding for the sewer, which was about a $300,000 project. We don't have the funding right now for the Trillium Drive, but it is a priority for us. So I think in not this, we're going to be in, starting July 1, we're going to be in our second budget year. So we pretty much, all the money that we budgeted has pretty much been spoken for. And so we're proposing to kind of push this out a little bit to at least see how the sewer work goes, and then see shortly thereafter if we can't get going on the design phase and maybe start building that in 2022.
Is any of the Metro Park property involved in this?
No, the property downstream of this, some of it's, you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm.
So
I do.
There's a couple of private lots right here, and then there's kind of a homeowners association tract that's down in here and down below here. So most of this open space is a tract that's, we don't always do it that way now, but Henry, I don't know if you were around before. Were you around before or after this was built?
I am afraid to admit, but it probably was during.
Well, anyway, we used to do tracks, and the homeowners association were responsible for those. We don't do those very much anymore, but that's what they have up there. Homeowners pay for some level of maintenance of those tracks, and that's what we have here. And that goes all the way to 205, or not 205. I'm sorry, 213, because 213's kind of, it's a ways, but it's down there. There's no metro property along this section.
Okay, I thought that was part of the stuff that they had bought when they bought Newell's Canyon.
I don't think so. I'll look real quick here, but I don't think so. Yeah, I think they have, Metro has property on the other side of 213.
Ah, okay.
And I think that's my last slide. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. I'm going to close this one though, if I can, and go to a different one. Just a second here. I wanted to talk a little bit about our favorite project. Get back to screen sharing again. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a quick update on the operations complex. That was also on the agenda to talk about tonight. Moving ahead pretty quickly with the detailed design of this project. So again, this is First Street, which is about a block off of Malala. So Malala is in front, we're in front of us here, and First Street goes through and out eventually to Beaver Creek Road. I think most of you know where the site is, but it's the old Morgan Distributor site. And this is the kind of the front office, warehouse. There's a variety of different warehouse builds in the back area here. And this drawing represents kind of our plan for what we're going to do with the site. We have decided to remodel as opposed to tear down and rebuild the existing warehouse into an office building that occupies everything with kind of this T-shaped, we call it the clean T design, and operations, parks operations, public works operations, our facilities maintenance staff, they'll be on the lower floor along with the main lunchroom and locker rooms. And then GIS and engineering will be on the upper floor, and there's a big portion of the back of the building that's going to be undeveloped on that second floor as well. So the parking lots, as you see them today, will change somewhat, but there's like these two lots, this lot, these two lots, they stay pretty much the same. We have to reconfigure this a bit because we're getting rid of one of the driveways. There's a garage door on the front of this that we're getting rid of, and we need to get ADA access here. So I've got a couple of other better shots than that, but lots of parking for both staff and equipment. And of course, we'll utilize this warehouse for a fleet shop, and we're going to do some significant grade changes in the yard itself, just so we'll have drive-up access into this building. Right now that doesn't exist. It's mostly loading dock, so we'll be able to drive straight up to these doors instead of have them, right now they're kind of a loading dock for a beer truck or something, picking up pallets of soft drinks or hard drinks. But yeah, that's generally where we're at. I'll go to the next slide.
John, just a quick question.
Yes.
How much of your current operation will remain in the present location it's in?
We're debating that. We wouldn't want any of our staff to remain at our current place. What we don't have on this site is a room for a lot of the kinds of things like bin storage for rock, gravel, sand, asphalt, those kind of things. We also don't have a place for de-icer, and we don't have a decant facility where we would de-water things like the sweeper and our Vector trucks, those kind of things. So we need to find a place for that. I think the city commission is there's several of them that are pretty interested in seeing us not be on Center Street. So We don't know. We're trying to figure out right now, just today, Vance and I talked a little bit more about, the reality of trying to get everything vehicle-wise on this site. And we think that can happen, but we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with those other kind of facilities. And what do we do, if an emergency happens, for how we store things. We don't have room for we do a sandbag station at Center Street. There's a lot of those kind of things that we've got one other site that has some potential as well. That's up in Mountain View. So we're looking at all our sites, but I think there's interest in redevelopment of the Center Street site. There's interest in a park at the upper yard. So don't have an answer for you yet, John, but all of our day-to-day functions would happen out of this site.
Yeah, thanks.
What about the Parks Department? What part of that building are they in?
They're on the first floor of the building with Vance's, with all the operations crews.
And their equipment, is that at a different site?
Most of their equipment's going to remain on the Mountain View site or the cemetery site.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Bob. John is correct. The majority of Parks equipment that's currently at Mountain View will stay there, but there are several trucks and some equipment that we have programmed into the operations complex.
I think for me, it's mostly those trailers and mowers that go out on a more regular basis that would need to be, driven to, picked up, or stored at the existing, at the facility that they mow them at. We just are limited. It really was never our intent. It's always been our intent to have some Center Street facility available. So we're kind of dealing with the commission feedback that suggests we should be doing something different. This is just a quick shot of a rendering of what the front of this building will look like. If you've seen it now, there's a big garage door right here, and there's some kind of outcrops that have a single story out on either of these sides. And all that will be peeled away. We'll be cutting some pretty major holes in the existing walls, taking out some of them and rebuilding them. But most of the building's being reused. So it'll look much different, and hopefully have, we don't get a lot of street traffic or meeting traffic, but we'll have some. And for them, we'll have some amenities.
Regarding the bike rack,
How about the HVAC equipment? Is that going to be changed?
It will be new. It will be on the roof.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Ray, you had a question?
yes. Regarding the bike rack, is it too late to change the design of it, or is it because the current design is a wave rack and it looks like it's gonna be installed right next to the wall? So I didn't know if there's a possibility to change that design to change it to a U-rack and place it correctly or more properly.
We were talking about using the Oregon City Bridge design that we have.
That's U-rack, yeah.
Yeah. So these were just, the architect plugged those in. And,
Okay, got you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And based on the amount of, but this isn't employee bike rack. There's other places for employees bike parking. This would be visitors. And I don't know that we've ever had a visitor show up on a bicycle. So we will.
I'll be first then.
Yeah, you might be our first, Ray. And hopefully that'll be enough bike rack space for you. Another rendering. This is an older schedule I was able to find, but I think it's fairly up to date. We're definitely going through the land use process right now. This is a CMGC process, so the contractor has been at the table the entire time through the design process. helping us make decisions with materials and constructability. We're done with the detailed design, and we're moving into more of a construction design package right now, and looking at furnishings and those kind of things. So we did have I think Vance and crew had a neighborhood meeting with the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association, and hopefully we're on track for land use approval. We'll be in front of the Planning Commission. I can't remember the date, but hopefully not too far out from that. And we'll have detailed plans in the building. And, you know, the idea is to get this constructed by August, September 2021. We're really trying to push that, but we're hearing that there's not a lot of, there's still a lot of trades that need to go into this, even though it's moved from a new building to a remodel. There's still a lot of trades that need to go in and out of there. So I'm not sure how much we can gain here, but I'm hoping a month or two.
Well, I can imagine your employees have ants in their pants for you to get her done.
Hey, John, I got a question that I think I might get the answer to as no, but is there going to be a public meeting space available in that building? I know the city's kind of shy of them.
Not the kind of meeting space that you could access after hours without
Approved without somebody being there.
yeah. You know, is the right meeting, for instance, if we, you know, so regular meetings for, like, say, a neighborhood association group, probably not. But if there's a need for a open house or something, and, you know, it's you know, there's so many of those are our projects anyway. So if we would want to do that, we could have staff in the building to open the building and have that meeting there. We've got good meeting room spaces. You know, I think we're using our lunchroom as kind of the multi-purpose meeting room for, like, all staff. So that would be the only room in this building that would be available for a large group. But I think I want to say we have a meeting room that can hold like 18. Does that seem about right, Vance?
Yes, that's correct, John.
Okay. So anyway, we're moving forward with these 100% design documents, and trying to think about long lead items, and hopefully we get a good bid that we can afford, and that's kind of how we've been tracking. So we think we're in the right place, and get commission authorization to move forward with that. Commission seems very aggressive about wanting that done, so I don't see too big a problem there. And the only kind of unknown is land use. So if you're really feeling interested in wanting to attend the Planning Commission and speak on our behalf and just tell them how bad we need this facility done, feel free to help us out there. That's it for me.
Okay, well, let's see what we've got left on the agenda here. Communications, does anybody have anything for communications? Ray, I know that there was something that you wanted to maybe touch on briefly.
Correct. So they're both related things regarding basically return to work and return to school at Clackamas Community College. And most looking to see if there's any partnerships with other businesses or the city, whoever is trying to prepare for people to return to their offices, possibly this summer or this fall. I will say for the college, since our shuttle is not going to return to service until probably early next year, I'm preparing to reduce demand on the parking lots, because I don't want all the transit riders to start driving alone to the campus. So one thing I've been trying to do is prepare for carpooling, and to encourage that by using the Get There website and making possibly carpool permit system. So there's some of the ideas I have, but just wanted to, I guess, put a discussion out there if anyone's heard of anybody trying to create return to school programs in the city.
If anybody is interested, tomorrow night I'll be addressing the city commission in regard to amending the CIC code. And occasionally the CIC has some transportation issues coming up, so we're gonna hopefully get some changes made for that code to make it a little more citizen oriented. Thank you.
We were going to try to get a couple of representatives for the comp plan meetings.
Yeah, so Pete Walter reached out to me about seeing if any of you would be interested in being on wants to nominate a primary and an alternate member to serve on the OC 2040 Project Advisory Team. I had forwarded you all the email that he had sent to me earlier today. And then he informed me that it sounds like Bob had already submitted an application to serve as a CIC or a TAC rep, and so had Ray. So I guess if that's true, then Bob and Ray, we could just confirm with you that you both would want to be the members to serve on that committee or team.
Yeah,
Yes, I still want to be on.
I'd be interested in being a member of that. I also put listed down as a CIC member, but I acquiesced to Amy Wilhite for that. She'll be the representative.
Yeah. Well, what I would like to say is that this group that we're talking about is one of the primary reasons the TAC committee actually exists. It's because it's been maintained as a public forum for discussion of transportation projects to move forward in CIP and comp plan designations. And so we desperately need to have people there to represent the transportation issues. And I would like to be there, but taking care of my wife, I can't promise I would be able to get to the meetings.
Okay, so I will let Pete know that we have confirmed that Bob and Ray will be the two members to represent the TAC for that team, and any further information or anything that you both can reach out to him.
Can we specify
don't know
primary
anything.
versus secondary?
Yeah, I don't know who wants to be what. You guys can find it out. I don't know.
I'd like to be primary.
Okay. Is that good with you, Ray?
You said you want to be primary? I can always be else in our role. I think there's a bike ped representative too on the committee. Right.
Well, if I'm curious, I guess, to me, this is a pretty big deal for the city. It's bigger than our transportation system plan. It's the nexus where land use really impacts our transportation systems. And, you know, there's probably smaller elements within that, but I guess I'm curious, you know, from others who, is there any other interest? If there was, then is there a way to, you know, kind of move the cards around a little bit? And by cards, I mean Ray or Bob, based on these other interests that they have. Or Ray, did you say there's opening on bike ped?
Yeah, I think there's a separate seat focused on bicycle and pedestrian interests, which I'm sort of passionate about because I want to provide that hat, I guess, on the committee. So if someone else wants to take transportation as an alternative, I take the bike ped seat. That's a possibility.
Like I said, I would definitely say that this is probably the most important opportunity we've had since the last comp plan update, which was what, eight years ago or something?
Did hey Kim, did Pete indicate like the commitment and what this commitment is in terms of number of
Yeah,
meetings?
it is. It is, he said that it's it would be 2 to 4 hours a month on average with 10 meetings of Pat over the course of the project. So,
Would I follow? I'm looking at the list here for positions. Would I fall under small employer? Would I fill into that kind of a slot if you wanted to use me as an additional member?
I think what I'm hearing is if Ray do you know, Ray, have they filled the bike ped position?
I don't know if they filled it, but I applied for that. Well, I applied for like 4 or 5 positions. But a lot of them.
So yeah, that's where I was just thinking if Ray were to pursue one of those other positions, it would free up another opportunity on TAC. And
Yeah. If you wanted to slide me into another position, I'd be willing to do that too.
okay.
Of course, being
So,
retired, I wouldn't have any problem attending the meetings, that's for sure.
so moving
Also just-
forward, then, should I inform Pete that Bob will be the primary, Ben would be the, like, alternate in case Bob wasn't available, and then Ray is wanting to do the bike ped?
Sure. If everybody's agreeable with that, I am.
I'm good with it. Thank you. Like I said, I would like to do it myself, but it would not be a good thing for me to do.
Also should make you aware that there's a CCC member representative on there, and I don't know if he has found the college representative, but just says employee of the college. I don't know who's representing the college, so wanted to mention that as well. So, not that I want to represent the college because that made me limit to the college only.
How many hats you got there,
I
Bray?
know there's a lot of hats.
okay, well, anything else, Kim or Henry?
Nope. That's all I've got. Oh, future agenda items. I've got Ray for your presentation next month, and then Dana's got a whole gang of items to talk about. Yay!
I had a question for John. It looks like there's going to be a big impact on local government revenues, and maybe an update next month about what you're looking at in terms of reduction maybe in gas tax revenues and the impact, things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, we've talked some about that. Those projections are changing regularly, and they're not looking better. So yeah, maybe we'll have see if maybe we can get somebody from finance to kind of at least get me information so that I can present it if they don't.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Kim,
And we were going to have a second go around, were we, on the suggestions for the Holcomb sidewalk grant?
right. Yes, we were.
Yeah, I was also hoping to give maybe a little update on ODOT's tolling work as well. So we've got a really big agenda. There's 4 or 5 transit items that I was going to group together. One is Ray's, but there's multiple transit components going on. And then there's also Metro's Get Moving bond measure that they're looking to put on the November ballot. So we have a lot of options to talk about.
Dana,
Yes.
is there any significant route changes? I think isn't September 1st when they make their route changes for the year?
TriMet does their updates, I think twice a year. Maybe it's March and September. Our next update that's kind of planned out would be in September of 2021. after Myers Road is open, they would look to reroute some transit service to the high school via the new Myers Road connection to the college.
Okay. Thank you.
It sounds like
you.
since next meeting agenda is going to be pretty full, on the following meeting after that, if possible, discuss physical distancing, if that becomes a continuous, like, long-term issue, whether that, I know I've been experiencing trying to, walk along narrow sidewalks and provide 6 feet distance between people. I don't know if that's something that the committee is interested in discussing about the long-term impact of physical distancing.
Sounds like
I'm sorry, Ray, but to what end? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but what are we going, we're not going to be making wider sidewalks.
I think my main interest is looking at what Portland's doing with its slow streets process of, open some of the streets to allow people to walk in the street. And I don't know if we're looking at doing that in Oregon City at all, or if that's not on the table.
That's one of the things that would end up going into the comp plan review too.
I can tell you that the Chamber of Commerce has already spoken to the city about impacting some of the parking spaces on streets to allow businesses to put tables and things of that nature out there. But, the idea is that it still allows for proper social distancing.
Yeah, that's kind of another topic that's out there is we're talking about parklets, which occupy parking for outdoor seating or outdoor commerce, as a form to kind of help get businesses back on track and still be able to manage social distancing. Active sidewalks with things like sidewalk sales just to help some of the retailers. So the commission's dabbling in that. They're doing so, I would say, wisely with some reservation about how much, we've got narrow pedways anyway, and limiting those to places like Main Street or the 7th Street corridor. But yeah, that's something, our agendas are pretty full given the meetings that we've missed. There's the other point, I guess, this is, up to you, Henry, and the committee, but we often take a break through the summer, and I guess I'm suggesting, based on the meetings that we missed, if we can keep doing these Zoom meetings, we probably ought to meet throughout the summer.
I would say that we probably should try our best to make up time so that we can get closer to being back on a schedule that would work for when we're fully open for business again. So that would mean more of these meetings from my front room and your front room, probably. But I think that's the best way to go, is go ahead and say we had our scheduled non-productive months behind us and that we should meet until the end of the year.
I concur.
I agree.
Yep, same here.
I also, would we need a motion for that or just say yes?
I think we just need to say yes because it's already scheduled.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bob,
Anything else? Well, it's good seeing you all. Thank you for the meeting time. And we'll see you next month, if not sooner.
Okay.
Everybody take care.
Meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, John. Bye, Dana.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Dana.
You can go, Henry.
Thank you. You did well.
Okay, thanks.